Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for September 22nd, 2021, recorded around 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot to talk about today, including the potential for a storm to be threatening the Lesser Antilles over the next several days. So let's go and jump straight into everything. Taking a wide look across the tropical Atlantic this afternoon, we continue to monitor a couple of systems out there. We have currently Tropical Depression Peter, Tropical Storm Rose, Invest Area 98L, and the remnants of Odette, which could come back to form a tropical storm over the next several days or so. And this is going to be something to all keep an eye on, again, over the next several days. So we'll first take a look here at Peter. Again, this is a tropical depression and not expected to intensify further. In fact, this is expected to become a post-tropical cyclone as early as later tomorrow. Visible satellite imagery continues to indicate that the storm is not really that organized. We can see that the circulation is actually becoming a lot less loosely or a lot less defined today, very loosely organized. And there isn't much semblance now of an actual surface circulation in here. And we can start to see that this is now beginning to open up into a trough of low pressure. And in fact, we can barely see that there's any westerlies here on the southern side to indicate, in fact, that this is a closed circulation. We have some pretty strong upper level winds cutting across out of the northeast here from southwest to northeast, blowing all the storms off here towards the northeast. And this is expected to remain the case during the next several days. And this will likely not really pose much of a threat down the line at all. We are also watching Tropical Depression Rose. Again, right now, sustained winds at 35 miles per hour. We can see here on the visible satellite imagery that the circulation is still well defined today, despite the lack of organized convection really since this morning. And again, this is expected to remain the case as we progress through the next several days or so. This isn't really expected to change much. Again, it's pretty strong upper level winds cutting across from southwest to northeast. Now, this is expected to turn. And again, this will eventually make its way into a post-tropical cyclone within the next several days. In fact, Hurricane Center has becoming post-tropical by some time on Friday or Saturday morning, Friday afternoon into Friday night and Saturday morning. But I wouldn't be surprised to see this open up into a trough of low pressure sooner if we don't get enough sustained convection around it much longer. Now we're also watching another wave out there. This is Invest Area 98L, and this is where the primary focus is going to be on today's video. Again, this is really the one wave that we're watching that poses at least the most significant concern during the next several days. Today, the circulation looks really healthy in the mid-levels, and there's some hints at a low-level surface field that is developing here. And in fact, you can kind of see that in some of these low-level features down towards the south of the storm, we are starting to get some hints at the westerly winds wrapping around and curling in this area. So there's a very well-defined mid-level circulation, and now we're starting to see this be reflected into the low levels where a circulation is likely forming. Again, this is generally moving towards the west-northwest here, and we'll be continuing on that direction for the next several days. And we can see that there's already a very healthy moisture field surrounding it today during the diurnal minimum, which is important that we have convection in the diurnal minimum that is attempting to fire, which is helping to sustain and reinforce that this is a very healthy wave and in fact on its way to tropical cyclone genesis. So over the next several days, the steering flow is going to become quite complicated really fast here. And one of the primary influences right now is we have this upper level low here, which is moving off towards the north and east. This is not necessarily where the steering is going to come from. However, the steering is within these two systems. These are both upper level systems here. This is actually the remnants here of Odette, which may in fact try to regenerate into a tropical storm over the next several days. Now, there is a blocking high to the north, which is forcing the remnants here of Odette to kind of gradually forcibly move to the south. And we can kind of see that it kind of just stays in that area. And in fact, here's by hour 72. This is now the reflection here in the mid-levels of 98L, soon to be SAM. And this is now showing up as a very healthy tropical cyclone down here. Now, keep in mind, this is still roughly at about 12 degrees north. So it is fairly far into the low latitudes at the moment. But the main thing is here, notice this big trough right here. I mean, this is a really huge trough. And this is now beginning to pick the storm further towards the north. Again, this general steering flow is generally one that is going to be favored to be moving off towards the northwest here. Now, if we were to take this forecast track verbatim, this would actually miss the islands. And again, there is still a way for the storm to turn quickly out to sea. Again, there is still that pathway where we could see a storm that moves out to sea or a storm that continues going west but misses the islands. And this is all a realm of possibility. But what we notice here is that we get this broad upper level low here, broad upper level system and troughiness to form over the western Atlantic. And this is causing just enough of a disruption within the North Atlantic ridge that we can't get a storm to kind of bend like Irma and be forced west southwest towards the islands and towards the Turks and Caicos. In fact, we get a storm that begins to lift northward as a result of this trough here. Now, keep in mind, this is beyond 5 days, and this is, beyond that 5-day realm. So this is Monday, and this would be Tuesday. So now we're starting to get out, 6 days. This is now day 7 and day 8. So there is some uncertainty within the day 8 forecast here, but I think there's reasonable enough confidence where we're starting to see where the bigger picture could come into play. And we notice that, again, we have a storm that is now beginning to turn harmlessly away from the islands and from the United States as this trough here is beginning to pick it up and send it north and east. Now, we do have a building ridge of high pressure, but the one thing is that this trough is going to be able to kind of split this here. And now we're talking, out to day 9 and day 10. And then we do have an upper level system that is kind of over here within, day 10 or so. And this will have to be watched for some development too. And if we look here at the 200 millibar wind, not really the most favorable pattern here, but there is some window of favorability where this could become a brief system down here. So we'll be watching that very closely. Now, with the other deterministic model run, this is the Euro. Again, much of the similar solution today towards the GFS. Remember, in yesterday's forecast period, this was near Hispaniola. Now today, it is several hundred miles towards the north and east as this upper level low has randomly appeared here. And I wouldn't say randomly, but in the model, it was very random. And it makes sense, though, given that this is now kind of caving to the GFS solution. And again, a pattern like this would favor by day 8 and 9 and 10 for a storm to be moving away and harmlessly out to sea at this point. So whether or not this actually comes to fruition, again, there is going to be a wide range of outcomes. Again, not even, I wouldn't necessarily say, though, that Florida is safe either. Just, we have to watch this. And in fact, if we look here at the ensemble GFS here, and we look at where a storm could potentially be, we'll kind of back this up. Again, there is still a wide range of possibilities. There is still some members here that are further south, but a large clustering of members here are further northward. And again, this is what I would suspect for late September for a storm to kind of come across and turn northward. It is notoriously hard for a storm to just barrel straight across and in towards the United States this time of year. It's just notoriously hard, especially towards Florida and the Bahamas. It's just very hard with all the troughs that come in typically this time of the year. If this was, this time last year, or not last year, but last month, I think we'd be dealing with a much different story. And again, I do think that this is going to be a pretty strong system. If we look here on the H-Wharf, again, the 200 millibar wind here kind of says it all. Again, very favorable upper level environment for a storm to be rapidly intensifying in here. Again, this is a pretty deep system here, 700 miles towards the east-northeast of the Lesser Antilles by Monday. This is likely a Cat 2, Cat 3 hurricane at this point, but it is moving generally towards the north and west. And we can see, if we kind of go to the end of the forecast here and just take a look at the overall environment over top of the storm, Generally a steering flow off towards the northwest, not really favoring an easternly or kind of a not really favoring a westernly flow at this point. So this would be something that is all pointing towards a flow that would keep it away from the islands, because at this point this is already at 17 north and just about 51 west, which again, if we look here at the back at the end here, this is indeed where it is. So this would be likely well towards the north of the islands, and we can see that just off the screen there's a trough here, which would likely begin to pick this up and merge it away. So hopefully this stays away from land, and of course we'll be turning our attention back towards the Caribbean over the next several weeks as we approach October and into mid-October, but of course we'll just have to see how everything progresses there. All right. That being said, I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon, evening. Of course, I am Michael O'Malley. I'll talk to you guys again some more tomorrow.